Everybody. This is the 29th of April 2025 Bus Advisory Board meeting. It's a virtual meeting, so I'd like to welcome everybody. And I'd like to advise and remind everybody present that this board meeting is not subject to the 1972 Local Government Act and therefore can continue to take place virtually. It is only board members that are taking decisions at the meeting. Others in attendance are there to provide advice to the board. The agenda and papers have been published on the council website in advance of the meeting. The council will be making a recording of the meeting, and this will be published on the council's YouTube channel and website in due course. I'd like to just highlight the following. So today's meeting is run virtually via Microsoft Teams. I think I've said that only elected members and officers will be required to speak on specific agenda items or observe. Other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely via Microsoft Teams. There is also some provision for any members of the public to speak at the meeting via the public questions or statements that have been submitted in advance. So please use the meeting chat function only for the purposes of this meeting, primarily to indicate that you may wish to speak. Please only speak at my invitation by raising your hand virtually. Please say your name before speaking, and please note the importance of turning off your microphones and cameras when not speaking. So we'll move straight on to apologies for absence. I don't know if we've received any apologies. Do we have any, Lee?
No, we haven't received any this time round.
Okay, that's good to hear. So minutes of the previous meeting held on the 28th of January. Does anybody have any board members have any comments about the accuracy of the previous meeting? I will take that as no. So I request approval of it then. So can a board members say whether they're content with the minutes? What's a hand up from Dave Redgewell? And Peter Travis. So unless anybody disagrees with that, and hand up from Tony Rees, I'm presuming that that's all in favour of passing the minutes, so we'll call that passed. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, we'll move on to public question time. So I believe there was one question. Is that right, Natasha?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was from Andrew Strong. Is he on the line? Is he here?
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to read out your question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a resident and bus user in Somerset. Somerset's bus service improvement plan, current version, has 22 deliverables, of which 5, numbers 8 to 12, are reliant on the output of Project Coral, which is a government-funded national software package to provide a back office process for contactless payment and capped fares in a multi-operator environment. Now, we've been told previously Peninsula Transport are working on a framework that member authorities in the South West will be able to adopt when the Project Coral software is ready to move on from its current test stage. But those transport authorities that already have paper-based multi-operator ticket schemes, such as Devon, Wiltshire, North Somerset, West of England, and many other places around the country, they're well placed to make use of the new software very quickly by modifying their existing multi-operator schemes to replace the purchase of a paper day or weekly ticket with a capping on contactless cards. Unfortunately for bus users in Somerset, it won't be possible to do it quickly because there are no paper-based multi-operator ticket schemes in place at present. So work will have to be carried out to determine zones, ticket range, conditions and prices before capping can start. All these things will have to be agreed by the operators who bear the revenue risk, including Somerset Council in respect of its gross cost contracts. Now, the need to undertake this additional work, which neighbouring authorities will not have to do, will delay the implementation of multi-operator capping in Somerset and thereby delay progress towards the 5 BSIP deliverables that are relying on this. And furthermore, the absence of a current paper-based multi-operator ticket will hamper efforts to promote the bus network as a whole through the which is work going on later this year through the publication of an all-operator timetable and maps funded by the BSIP. So, to enable bus users in Somerset to benefit from multi-operator capping at the earliest opportunity, will the council start engagement with bus operators immediately on a multi-operator ticket scheme with daily and weekly capped fares covering both the whole of Somerset and smaller zones in the principal towns? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I've got a response, which is whilst we're keen to introduce a multi-operator ticket to Somerset, we wish to work with Peninsula Transport, and through their support, this should enable us to deliver a scheme that works for Somerset, but also regionally, which will be of more benefit to passengers in the long term. An initial meeting has already taken place with further follow-up meetings planned in the diary, including a meeting with operators across the region booked for May. By taking the time to work through a scheme in more detail with Peninsula Transport, this will provide us with the knowledge to effectively implement a scheme for all our operators to sign up to. Once we are clear on what is required and how this can be implemented, we will be able to have a more productive discussion with the operators and bring them on board. And to be clear, this is very much a priority of this council, is to get onto the is to get moving on this. So I'll be making sure that things are progressed at speed, and I fully understand what you're saying. Okay. This is not a time for questions, Peter and David. Well, it's public questions, but you know, that's for ones that are submitted already. Okay, so I'm going to move on to section 5, which is the bus service improvement plan, the BSIP phase 1 updates. So I'm going to invite Natasha to give us a quick briefing on that, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm Natasha Bates, Service Manager for Transport Planning for Somerset Council. So I am going to just run you through the Somerton DDRT side of things, and then I think Mark's going to come in and talk to you about the capital scheme. So just bear with me while I share my screen. I've got a quick PowerPoint presentation. All right, can you see that in presentation form?
Yes.
Yep, lovely, thank you. So as promised at the last Bus Advisory Board meeting, I said I would do an update on the Somerton Digital Demand Responsive Transport Trial, so the Somerton DDRT. And as I think most of you are aware, this is funded through phase 1 of BSIP funding. So the service launched end of May last year, so right at the very end of May. So June was our very first month of full operation. And this slide here just shows you what the patronage has done since the launch of the service. So where we started in June, the patronage has climbed up since about October. It kind of flattened out for a little bit. We had a slight dip in December, which is to be expected with the Christmas period and bank holidays, and then the patronage has continued to climb again, and March saw the highest figures we've had since the start of the service. So it's all doing very well at the moment, so really pleased with that. And then the next slide just gives a bit of a comparison as to how Somerton is comparing to our other Slinky services. Now, just to note, the other Slinky services are not yet digital at the moment. It is just the Somerton one. So again, you can see Somerton is doing really well and is kind of operating up around the same levels as many of the other Slinky services across the county. And then in terms of booking methods, so passengers booking onto the Somerton Slinky have 3 ways of booking. They can use the website, they can use the booking app provided by Padam, or they can phone into the office to book. And as you can see here from this graph, the numbers of people booking on the app are increasing, and whilst calls are also increasing, that's because overall the numbers have increased, but actually the gap between phone calls and using the app is getting bigger. And overall, 64% of all of our bookings have been through the app, which is really good. And I think the team have done a lot of work to try and work with passengers when they ring into the office to explain to them how they can use the app. And a lot of them are seeing the benefit of doing that in that they can book their journeys at any time. The app is available 24/7, whereas they've got to wait for the booking lines to open during the day to book their journeys. So moving on, so this just gives you just a bit of an idea of kind of how busy the services are at different times of the day. So the trial in Somerton runs from 7 AM to 7 PM. And as you can see from this graph, from about 7:30, it starts to really pick up. 8 o'clock is really our peak time. And then again in the afternoon, we've got another peak at 3:30, and then journeys start to tail off really after 5:30. So that's just to give a bit of an overview of the usage. This graph here shows you the passenger trips per customer per month. So when we first started the service, on average, each customer travelling on the Slinky was making about 4.5 journeys a month, and that has increased over time, and the average is now up to about 7.5 journeys per month. So again, all going in the right direction. Satisfaction rating. So passengers booking through the app, once their journey has completed, they get the option to rate the service and the driver, and they can give it a rating between 0 and 5 stars. And as you'll see, the majority of people have been up around the 5-star rating, probably about 4.8. It's probably the lowest we've been. So again, the service is doing really well, and we're getting some really, really positive feedback from customers. And then just finally around promotion, just to kind of cover what we've been doing so far. So we have produced leaflets which have been handed out in the local communities and kind of relevant locations. We've had a lot of support from the Somerset Bus Partnership, which has been greatly welcomed. They've done a lot of work in terms of promoting this on their bus stands, going out to the community, making people aware of the Slinky. We've had social media adverts and then adverts in the Leveller, Blue Sheet and the local Gazette. So a lot of promotion out there. And then it doesn't stop there. We will continue to promote the service. Again, we're going to carry on with social media. We've got adverts continuing in the Leveller, and we are working with Padam to produce push notifications through the app. So we can send messages out to registered users just to remind them that the service is there and asking them if they've used it. And we're also working with Padam to do a bit more targeted messaging for those users that may have registered but not used the service or haven't used it for a while. So there's still a lot more to come. But really, that's just a quick run through of where the Somerton DDRT is. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Natasha. And yeah, I'd just like to echo our thanks to the Somerset Bus Partnership, who've really taken on board the Slinky, and many events, especially Tony and Rosa, have been out using the service and taking it to the villages to really promote it. So a real appreciation for that. So any questions? Peter, straight in.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Natasha. Peter Travis, Somerset Bus Partnership, chair of the bus group. Yes, Tony and Rosa in particular have done a really impressive job of promoting the digital Slinky, and we very much support it. I just wonder what the target number was for the Somerton Slinky bus. You say that we're up to 800 single trips in March. It's interesting that the trips per head per individual have gone up from 4.5 to 7.5. So how many extra individuals have we attracted over that period? And are you satisfied with that? Are we happy that we've got enough users? And how much extra capacity is there to increase that 800 single trips that we saw in March to a higher figure? Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of how many new individuals we've attracted, on some of these questions I can't answer now, so I'll have to go away, get the figures, and come back to you. But I don't know how many new passengers we've attracted, but we do continue to grow the registered passengers, but I can't give you the exact figures. Obviously, the in terms of capacity, yes, there is still capacity on the vehicles. We've obviously got peak times where it's much busier, but we need to target some of the kind of quieter times to try and get more people travelling out of the peak as well. So we'll be working on how we target that. And in terms of viability, so I don't think there's any DRT services across the country that don't require some level of funding. None of them are completely viable. So we are always looking to increase the number of passengers to try and reduce the cost. So again, I can't give you the target off the top of my head, but we are obviously trying to always increase the number of passengers travelling to bring our costs down.
Okay, thank you. Natasha, is there any other questions? Strangely quiet. Oh, here, Peter's back in. Go on, Peter. Was that a legacy hand? Is that a legacy hand, Peter?
I failed to switch on my microphone. Sorry, Chair. We're such great fans of DDRT, as I know Natasha is as well. The 25-26 BSIP includes an extension of DDRT. Have we got any timescale for when it will be rolled out in? Will it be this year? Will it be next year? Quite when is it going to happen?
Yeah, I do cover that in my later presentation on BSIP funding, but we are anticipating the summer of this year. So we are working with the PDAM provider at the moment, and we are just working in terms of how we achieve that expansion, and we are trying to get that done as quickly as we possibly can.
Dave. Councillor Mansell, sorry.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Wilkins, that's fine. I put it in the chat, and I suspect the answer is yes. So could the the slides be shared, please? And just looking at them quickly, I wasn't quite sure whether both Taunton and Wellington Slinky were covered. There was a comparison slide. Could you confirm that, please?
Yes, they are. Let me just flip back there for you. Bear with me. So yes, the Taunton and Wellington Slinky are here. It's the purple line. Obviously, the patronage on there is lower, and we would expect that because we've got our community transport running in that area as well, and obviously quite a good network of public buses in the area. But I think obviously once we go to digital, we'll be changing how people can book. It will be more responsive. They can book up to an hour before they want to travel. So we think we can obviously increase those numbers further from here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. So thank you, Natasha. That's brilliant. And I'm going to invite Mark to speak about the Taunton Mobility Hub and the Rural Mobility Hub pilot and Green Waves. So Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. Shouldn't everybody see that?
Yes, we can see that, Mark.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
I'll just introduce myself. Sorry, there's some background noise there. I'm Mark Stanley Street. I'm the BSIP project manager.
Running slides, yeah.
Sorry,
Tony, can you've muted. Thank you.
He's muted. Sorry, I'm Mark Stanley Street, the BSIP project manager for capital schemes, and I'm going to give you a bit of an update on the urban hub, the rural hub, and where we are with Green Waves at the moment. So the current sort of situation with the Taunton Transport Hub is we've just completed a REBA 3 design phase, which is completed at the end of March, and I'll show you some visuals of that in a minute. There's some engagement with Taunton Town Council over usage of some of the buildings and at the site. And the site was vacated at the end of March. The NHS have been using it, I think, for the past 3 years as a vaccination centre. So we've now, I believe the site is now fenced off, and some early enabling works were completed along the tree line at the back of the site. And we're looking at it being operational by April 2026, with potential to include an indoor waiting room as well. So that's where we are currently. Previously, we undertaken some public consultation as to what people wanted to see at the hub, and as you can see, a lot of people wanted to see toilet facilities. Real-time information was key. The indoor waiting area, and quite a few people wanted to see a cafe and a hub at the hub, and lesser, but people wanted a refillable drinking fountain, Wi-Fi, potential for parcels lockers, and passive provision for bike and e-bike hire. Currently, the design, like I say, is at the end of the REBA 2 stage, and that's a visual of the master plan. So on the left there, you've got the operational area of the bus hub with 6 bus stands and a central visual rain garden, which also works as a drainage area for runoff water from the site. And the grey bit to the right is the public realm area with building 1 in the forefront there. So the intention there is to put some better paving and facilities there, cycle storage. There's also some cycle storage over on the other side of the site as well. And at the back of the site, there is 4 bus layover bays, and they will also have passive provision for EVs, electric vehicles. And there'll be new cycling facilities, with the Tower Street running along the bottom will become a one-way system to improve traffic flow. And we're currently working with partners to look at potential for a cafe and toilets in the waiting room. And like I said previously, the operation target date is April 26. I've got some visuals of the public realm areas here, and some green planting as well. And all the bus shelters will have sedum roofs and potential for solar power as well. Timeline for the plan programme is we're pretty much where we need to be at the moment. And like I say, the plan is to be completed by April next year. So that's the plans for Taunton. The rural hub. We initially, the site was going to be Somerton, but that was ruled out for heritage constraints. So when shortly after I joined the council, we were engaging with Langport Town Council, who've been very positive about the rural hub being located in Langport. We've also met with Langport Business Forum and commissioned consultants to undertake some initial design work, which is now completed. That work's currently back with us. It came back last week, and it's under review internally, with a view to going to the next stage, holding a co-design workshop sometime during May, and commence stage 2 of the design. And like I say, we've got regular engagement sessions with the town council, which, as I say, is positive, and also target completion date of March 26 for the rural transport hub. The Green Waves projects, Green Waves East is work in progress at the moment, with completion due later in the year. Green Waves West is currently in the design phase, and that will be aligned with some of the traffic signals recovery works that are going on to minimise disruption while the works are underway. So that was a quick canter through, and open to any questions, Chair.
Yes, I'm going to open it up to questions. I think that Andy put a question in the chat, which I believe Sunita has answered. Is that right? Let me just check.
I'll just stop sharing.
Yeah. So to be clear, Andy asked, why is it going to take another year? And Sunita has responded with the complexity of the heritage issues and various other things that has sort of pushed the project a little further than we would like. I'm just going to bring in Sunita to just respond.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, really, and so that people do understand the complexity of the site. The part of the site where the kind of the long building is rather than the square building falls within the heritage boundary of the Taunton Castle and I can't think what it's called at the moment, where the museum is. Yeah. And the issue is that when we dig down there, so as soon as we take the concrete up that's there, as soon as we start to dig down there, we're going to need an archaeologist on site. So we're in order to make some of the kind of the paved areas accessible for market stalls and things like that, we're going to have rising bollards. They go down about 900 mil, so just less than a metre into the ground, about 3 feet. And in order to dig down that far, we have to have an archaeologist on site to check that we're not disturbing, we're not finding things of value, of heritage value underneath the site. So it's probably a bit more of a complicated site than anyone appreciates. If you go and stand and have a look at it, you'll see that the surface isn't level, for example. It undulates in a number of ways. So we've got to take up all the concrete and level the whole thing, put a really good sub base down, so that, because we'll be running heavy buses on it, so it's got to be a really high quality sub base on it. So there's probably a lot more work than people actually anticipate that us needing to do. So I think just an understanding of kind of how much work there is to do on site would be really appreciated.
Okay, thanks for that, Sunita. I think that's a good explanation of where we're at, but it's exciting that it is moving at pace now, and that we have a detailed plan to follow to get this up and running. So I've got David Redgewell. David.
Thanks, Richard. So a few points. So where are we with any concession for catering? Because that does bring an income. And there's obviously the other bus stations in Peninsula and Gessler and Gateway do have catering facilities, even if it means letting a mobile caterer onto the site. Because passengers, we've got that. Penzance Station's a classic example of that, where I was a couple of weeks ago. So there are ways around that if there's not a building space, but there was a catering facility at that bus station previously. Staffing's important. Somerset Council, obviously, like every other Southwest Council, is cash strapped. I don't think there's any of them that have really got a lot of money across our region, Richard. So I believe the market house is for sale. And so the logical thing would be to move the TIC staff across to the bus station, which gives you staff and employees on the site and saves public money, which I'm always interested in, public money being not wasted in any part of Southwest England. So I don't know whether that would work, or whether you would employ a member of Transport Somerset staff to manage the bus station, bearing in mind that it's not just First Group running their buses in there, but obviously you've got Stagecoach Southwest. You're going to hopefully have better facilities for National Express customers, and I hope that's going to have a conversation. But also you've got your own contractors in the form of Hatch Green running a lot of services. A lot of the services, of course, that First run are either being funded by the council, like Wales, in Somerset bus station is. So we came to a deal there, which I'm very pleased with First Wales and West Division, where obviously because they run services, they park there overnight on land obviously that is yours, but they're providing council services, so that makes a sensible situation. So very pleased with that, Rich, indeed. So we could come to some arrangements with First in the bus station. And the other point I would make is charging points. We got electric buses. I was out on them the other day, and they're fine, apart from they're getting held up in Dunbar at traffic problems with the roundabouts, maintaining timetables. But so what about charging points and also coaches? There might be coaches in Taunton that'll park up when you could park in there, make revenue, which Peninsula wants to do. So there's a few issues there: management, staffing, whether the staff rooms are going to be used by First or the other operators. Make sure that Stagecoach have a stand for the hospital and park and ride services, and it works like an integrated hub. Better to call it Taunton Transport Hub than some strange name that people don't understand. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, David.
David, I'll bring Mark in and possibly Sunita as well. But we'll start with Mark.
Yeah, I'll take some of those comments away. David, thank you for those. I'm not sure whether Sam wants to comment on some of the discussions about staffing.
Yeah, I think all of that, David, is stuff that we've been discussing over the last few weeks. We're starting to do a bit more work on kind of what happens after we've done the capital works, if you like. So what the next phase of work that we're going to be looking at is, and I'd say it's all subject to negotiations with partners at the moment. We've had useful discussions, as Mark has said, with the town council, but also useful discussions with First. And we will start having those conversations with other operators as well. So it's a piece of work that's underway. I can't give you anything firm at this point in time, but it's a piece of work that's underway.
Okay. I'm going to move on to Pete. I think that does answer most of your questions, David. It's a movable feast, shall we say. So Peter.
It was in October 2021 when Somerset Council put forward its proposal for a mobility hub. So for 4 years you've been working on this, and we still don't know who's actually going to operate it. That's still to be resolved. I mean, it is breathtaking the amount of time it's taken.
I think you don't know what you're operating until you've designed it. So it's really hard to then say what the operation looks like. So
yeah,
I think
but you've had 4 years, Sunita. 4 years.
I don't think we've had 4 years, but I'll give you that, because Somerset Council didn't exist 4 years ago. So
no, but this team did, and I mean this is not a laughing matter. You submitted a proposal to the DFT in October 2021 for a Taunton mobility hub. Here we are in the middle of 2025. And we're still talking about designing it. I mean, it's breathtaking. So do we know who is going to operate this hub? Also, it's an interchange, but as I understand it, the park and ride buses aren't coming into it, nor are the town services. So it's not really going to be much of a Taunton interchange, is it?
So it's still to be determined which services will be coming into it. So without, I can't say for sure which services will be coming into it. So I don't rule any out, and I don't rule any in at this point in time. That's a discussion with the operators to have.
Okay. So that's the mobility hub. I mean, the good thing, and we very much welcome Mark's approach on this. I know he's having meetings with the Taunton Bus Group, particularly David Northey, and that we very much hope that they will continue, because we need this to work in the best interests of bus passengers. They've waited a very long while for it, and it needs to be done. If we can come on to greenways, again, it was part of our submission in October 2021 to actually have bus lanes, and I was involved after the award was made in early 2022, talking about the bus lanes. I'm not sure what consultation has taken place that switched the bus lanes to greenways. I'm particularly not sure what consultation has taken place with the major operator in Taunton First South, because when we had a meeting recently with First South, they were surprised that this greenways option, which is a poor second best to bus lanes, was going to be introduced. If we want to encourage modal shift, it's a great advertisement to encourage people to go by bus, is if you're stuck in traffic in Taunton, to see a bus shooting down in a bus lane. It's a missed opportunity having greenways. What consultation has there been with the bus operators on the move from bus lanes to greenways?
I'll bring Sunita on that, but I'm just going to challenge you on your presumption that bus lanes are a great advertisement. I haven't seen evidence of that. What I have seen evidence of is a strong pushback. Against bus lanes, which is problematical.
So has council decided against it because of their fear of a pushback? Is this just a political cop-out by the council?
Absolutely not.
Well, why, on what basis are greenways going to mean it's going to be faster for buses to get into Taunton than having bus lanes? Have you seen any evidence which suggests that? I suggest there is absolutely none. So this is a slower way of getting buses through Taunton, and that's the option for political reasons you seem to have adopted.
No, that's not the case.
It's not been a political decision. What we didn't have is the technology solution available when we submitted the business case. So we and just to go back to that. Yes, whilst the original BSIP was submitted in October 2021, we didn't get confirmed funding until 2022, and we had to submit a revised BSIP. So it would have been kind of mid 2022 when we knew exactly how much money we got, how much money we had to play with. But in terms of the greenways, technology has come on a significant amount in the last 2 to 3 years. So actually, a more cost-effective solution is and a less kind of invasive solution into the carriageway, and a solution that's easier to deploy in other places has come forwards. So actually working through that solution and understanding what that solution is going to deliver for us, and it will deliver better bus priority through the the town, and potentially better bus priority than traditional bus lanes would have given us. But until we get that out on the street, we can't prove that to you. So it's really difficult for me to sit here and say yes, it will. There are, you know, it's a matter of how technology is coming on and how quickly that's happening at the moment, and being presented with something that gives us a really low invasive way of doing something is absolutely priority, because it limits the amount of disruption.
And have you consulted with the bus operators on
we've worked with the bus operators all along, so I'm not quite sure why that would have come as a surprise to them.
Taxis? Why a taxi? Why?
Okay, hang on. Can we just stop here, because at the moment nobody's coming through me as chair. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, David. I think Sunita has answered your questions. I'm going to move on to Tony Rees.
I put my hand up because David Northey was making some comments, and I was wondering if you could invite him to speak. He has actually put quite a lot of them in the chat, but I think he has a few comments on other parts of Mark's presentation.
Okay,
as well.
I think on this occasion, David Northey is very much a Taunton-based person, and I'm very happy to allow him to. I was going to allow him to speak, but I will bear in mind that he's not a member of the board at this point. So I'm just going to ask David to be fairly succinct in his questions, but I fully understand his Taunton connections and the usefulness, especially on both the Taunton Hub and the Green Waves. But I would like to point out on the Green Waves that this is something that can be brought to the whole county, and at a vastly it's vastly easier to bring the Green Waves than it is to bring hard bus lanes, and therefore has a considerable attraction for this council in that regard. But I'll bring in David now. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. My washing machine is just on its final spin just at this time in the background. So, yes, Mark and I have had some initial discussions, and that's really positive. And as Peter said, my biggest concern at the moment, and it's good, Sunita, that you said as well, that we haven't really had the discussion with how the bus services will operate into the interchange. It's really important that we think about at least the park and ride service connecting to the hospital, as that's one of the single biggest things that we get in our bus stores from across the county, because people coming in from Bridgewater, from Yeovil, from Minehead, and making that simple interchange in the interchange with a park and ride service to take you to the hospital has to be critical, I think, out of anything. So if we can continue to work on that. And I met with, and Peter and I met with First in Taunton a few weeks ago with the operations team. And I met with First last week with Simon Goff at the Hamilton Road Depot. And the single biggest thing asked from them is traffic flow through the town of Taunton. It causes them the biggest single issue with trying to have a reliable bus service and keep them on time. So I think what we need is probably a bit more information on the Green Waves, how it will actually work. Is there any modelling being carried out compared to bus lanes? And I know the problem of digging up roads and creating extra space, but I think we just need to see that, because I can't quite get in my head how it might work in practice. So I'd quite like to see some modelling of that comparing to bus lanes. And I think, as Peter's right, if you're sat in a car and you see a bus flying by, it does have a psychological impact. We've got too many cars running in this town centre bit of Taunton that really disrupts the network. But I'm really keen to support and help with Mark and the team in Taunton to get Taunton working, because it was meant to be the premier location, Taunton. It was meant to be the beacon. Right, here we are, BSIP funding. Let's get Taunton right. And at the moment, it feels a bit backward. We've got the EV buses that have come in. Great news, but there's still a lot more work to do. I won't say any more, and I've made some comments in there, but continue to work with Mark and the team, if that's okay with you, Richard and Sunita, to support that with my own sort of personal knowledge and experience of Taunton, and I'm sure other members of the team as well.
I didn't detect a question as such, David, but I think we can all take.
Well, I think the question is then that we must develop a transport plan for getting all the buses into the mobility hub. So we have to look at that. Probably that's the first thing that we have to sit down and develop a transport plan of how the buses are going to work in and out, so that we can be clear of that. And then the second, identifying the junctions and the issues in Taunton that probably need green wave, so that we can help Mark in prioritising that, and then engaging with first.
Okay, I'll hand over to Mark, because he seems keen to give a response.
Yeah, I was just going to say, David, I'll pick that up outside of this meeting with you, if that's all right.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right. I think that's fairly exhausted. I appreciate everybody's questions and concerns. I think they have been noted by the team, and we will obviously take away all that's been said. So thank you for that. I'm now going to move on to the BSIP funded schemes, and I'm going to invite an update from Natasha on this. Okay, hello Natasha, you're back?
Hello, I'm back, yes. Bear with me and I will share my screen again. Excuse me. Right, hopefully you can see that in presentation format again. Yep. Okay.
Fine.
So thank you. So at the last meeting, we obviously brought the high level themes along to the meeting, and then we talked about what we were looking to fund with the BSIP funding, and then that went through our governance process. We took those themes to the Planning and Transport Subcommittee, then the more specific schemes went through scrutiny, and then we had a lead member key decision that signed those off. So I just thought I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I just thought it'd be helpful to bring it back to the board just to update you all on what we finally decided on. I know there's been a lot in the press already, so you've probably seen this, but it's just to kind of clarify for everybody where we landed. So in terms of the Taunton package, we had those 5 evening services that were running in Taunton, and they have continued, and they just ran on from the 1st of April. And then in terms of supporting existing services, we had Service 3, so the Taunton Town Service serving Bishop's Holme, which was BSIP Plus funded, and that carried on from the 1st of April as well. And then the £1 single fare on the Park and Ride also carried on from the 1st of April, so there was no break in any of those schemes continuing. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we will be rolling out the digital demand responsive transport element to our Taunton Slinky, and we're aiming to get that in hopefully over the summer. And then finally in Taunton, we've got, and I know we've just touched on some of this, the enhancements to the Taunton Transport Hub and the Comitro Hub, which are planned for early 2026. So that's Taunton. And then moving into Yeovil, we've got evening services. So the Service 376 has journeys extended from Street to Yeovil Monday to Saturday, and that started on the 7th of April. And then we had those 5 services listed that were getting BSIP Plus funding. So we continued to support those services, and they ran on from the 1st of April. And then you'll have seen some timetable changes on the 54 and 58 from the 22nd of April. And then in terms of other service improvements and trials, the 51 saw a Sunday service in Yeovil introduced from the 20th of April. The 376 also saw a Sunday service from extending from Street to Yeovil, which started on the 6th of April. And then we are going to fund an extra journey on the CR6, which will facilitate a later return from Bridport. Now that is a Dorset County Council funded service, and so we are just working with them in terms of when that will start. So as soon as we've got a date, we'll be able to update you to let you know when that will commence. And then also in Yeovil, we've reviewed the Yeovil Town network. As most of you are aware, we've repurposed Service 11 so it doesn't run in competition with the 51, and that's created 2 new services, 50 and 53. And what we'll do with the 51 is we're continuing to monitor that, and providing that remains commercially viable during the day, we'll be looking to put evening services onto the 51, but we're just monitoring that for now. And then bus priority signal improvements, will be rolling out an improvement programme in Yeovil from early 2026, and we're also doing a feasibility study for a transport hub in Yeovil. That's linked to the wider regeneration work at Glover's Walk, and we expect to have that done early 2026 as well. Moving on to Bridgewater. In terms of evening services, we've extended the 21 in the evenings, which was running from Taunton to Bridgewater. It now extends on to Burnham-on-Sea, and that commenced on the 22nd of April. In terms of supporting existing services, Service 14 required additional support, so that contract was re-tendered, and that commenced the 22nd of April. And then other service improvements. So we've seen increased daytime frequency on Service B1, which is the Bridgewater Town service, and that started the 22nd of April. We've introduced a Sunday service on the B1, which was the 20th of April, and we'll be rolling out digital demand responsive transport to the Sedgemoor Slinky, and again, as I've said, aiming for summer of this year. And then bus priority signal improvements, will be rolling out a programme in Bridgewater early 2026, and then undertaking a feasibility study for the Bridgewater Transport Hub early 2026 as well. And then finally in Bridgewater, improving access for buses at the Bridgewater train station, and again that's aimed for autumn 2025. So that covers the 3 main town packages. And then just covering other targeted initiatives, so we have got a number of services that we were supporting with BSIP Plus, so the 25, 30, 126 and D2, and those have all continued to receive support. The 25 timetable started from the 22nd of April. All of the others just continued from the 1st of April, with timetable changes on the 126 and D2, which came into effect on the 7th of April. And then the only other thing we're doing there in terms of existing services, we are providing a small contribution to Devon County Council for the EX1, which many of you will know as the Exmoor Coaster, and is now renamed the EX1, and that service commences on the 25th of May, the summer service. And then in terms of other service improvements and trials, we've got Service 26 from Dulverton to Wiveliscombe, which links into the 25, and also the Service 27 Wiveliscombe to Wellington, which is the minibus trial 2 days a week, and those both started on the 22nd of April as well. And then in Frome, on the Service 30, we are looking to introduce an electric vehicle onto that service. The timescales on that will be dependent on our procurement processes and contract award. So once we've got to a position of awarding a contract, we'll then know the lead-in times for the vehicle. And then finally, just very quickly, county-wide initiatives. In terms of passenger information, the online county-wide bus map and timetable booklet we're aiming to have in place for the next timetable change dates in September. We are already working with First on achieving that. And as I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, we would have liked to have done April, but just with all the work we had and capacity kind of restrictions, we weren't able to do that for April, but we are on track to do that for September. And then we will continue marketing, promoting, monitoring and evaluating all of the schemes that we're funding through BSIP. So that will just be ongoing. And then we have got a stop design and improvement programme to roll out across the county. So there's some work to do around designing the strategy and what our minimum standards are before we can start rolling that out in the county. And the very last thing on RTI is exploring options for rolling RTI out and how the kind of ongoing management and support of that will continue. So like I said, just a very quick run through of where we ended up in terms of funding, and happy to take any questions.
Sorry, okay. I have noticed that Linda has put a comment in the chat about the 11 being withdrawn and not repurposed. I think that's just semantics really, as the 11 buses had a change of route and a change of number. So you could say it's been withdrawn, and another bus has, or in fact another 2 bus services have effectively been put in its place. But what I will do is I allow David Norvey to ask a question. I will ask Linda, but I'm just going to remind Linda to keep it short and snappy. So I'm going to bring Linda in first, and then I'll go to Tony.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, the Service 11. I obviously represent the Yeovil area. There has been an awful lot of disruption. I understand the word repurpose, and I do understand that the 50 goes around the lower half of the Service 11, but to people who use that service, you've withdrawn it. And unfortunately, what's been replaced is a 2-hourly service, which has caused an awful lot of disruption. There was no real thought. No, that's not correct. The impact it's had on the Larkhill and Abbey Manor and all, yes, they've got a 51 service, and that is another bowl of contention in the fact that their reliability. But what has happened has meant that Abbey Manor and Larkhill no longer have services to Preston Grove and Henford Lodge surgeries. Now, the Abbey Manor surgery was closed around COVID, and all residents were actually transferred to Henford. Now, what has happened is, because the 11 has been removed, they no longer have access to their medical facility. It means that they have to get the 51 to town and then catch 11. But unfortunately, the 11's a 2-hourly service, and it just makes it non-viable by bus. Basically, it's cut people off from vital doctors. It's also cut them off from supermarkets. So Asda, they can't get to and from Abbey Manor easily. They have to go into town first and then catch the same bus back again. It's increased their cost ticket price, because it's actually 3 tickets to do that. They no longer have access to Tesco Superstore, which the 11 served, where they could go into the store from Abbey Manor directly and come home again directly. It's made a lot of complications, and I think that yes, it was repurposed, as I acknowledge all the way through, it's been repurposed, but the repurposing hasn't been fit for purpose. The 2-hourly lower end has not worked, and it would be better if the 50 was more frequent, so that there was a connection with the 51 along Preston Road. It's caused so much.
Okay, Linda, I think
Sorry.
you've been very clear on the issues. I'm not sure we can, and Natasha can answer that directly at this point. But I think these are things that we need to take away and certainly look at. As you know, with any changes of such dramatic, that are so dramatic, there's a lot to digest. And thank you for keeping us informed in that. I'm going to move on to Tony.
Thank you. Yes, I want to support what Linda has said, but also looking at it from a slightly different point of view. First of all, thanks for doing it. You did it in a great hurry because of where we were with First. There wasn't any consultation with us at all, and we really felt we could have advised better. I would also challenge the whole thought that started this off, that makes the 11 competitive with the 51, as being something you didn't want to do. I don't see any problem with 2 services competing with each other. They also help each other. They don't run exactly the same way, so they support each other by people using one or the other. As Linda has said, there is great anger at removing the connection that people have to their medical facilities and to stores. But also this idea that we can't run an evening service until the daytime service is profitable. Well, one of the things that makes a daytime service profitable is to have an evening service. When you cut back an evening service, you suddenly find nobody's using the bus in the afternoon because they can't get out and get back. So again, it hasn't been looked at from a point of view of a network. We want the evening services on the 51 so that the daytime service will become more commercial and more profitable. I don't see the problem with the 11 competing with the 51. I'm sorry. It serves a different purpose.
Thank you, Tony. I think you've made that absolutely clear. Like I said, the team will take the comments away. I think there's a certain misunderstanding around the reasonings. I'll just go to Natasha if she's got any comment on that. If not, we'll just take away the comments. Natasha?
Well, I think probably John's better placed to explain.
Is John on the call? Sorry,
yeah, he is here to explain the rules around why, as a tendered service, we couldn't run in competition.
Hi, Richard. Yeah, just to update. So the issue was regarding the 51, that the 51 was no longer commercially viable. That was the discussion we had with First. In those discussions, we looked at how we could make the service viable so that we could introduce the evening service. And it is a policy we've had from day one, really, on BSIP, that whilst evening services in themselves most evening services will need support. There are commercial evening services in the county, but most will need support. And indeed, what we want to do is build on successful commercial daytime services to introduce evening routes. It was very clear from the work that we did in looking at the numbers of passengers that were boarding in the Abbey Banner and Larkhill area, that if those passengers, not all of them, but if the majority of them transferred to the 51, it would restore viability. We did a lot of work with both operators. We shared that information, and indeed that's been borne out by the information we've had from First in the first week of operation. We've seen a significant increase in patronage on the service, and as long as that's sustained, then we should hopefully at some point be able to introduce the evening service on the basis that the daytime is commercial. I totally agree with Tony that yes, an evening service does help to support sort of late afternoon journeys into a town. I get that, but the problem was that we would have ended up funding 2 bus services in the same area, and technically speaking, as a local authority, we are not allowed to financially support a service which to the detriment of a commercial one. You can argue about the length of the journey that's affected, if you like, where both services run over the same portion of the route. But once First came to us to say that service was struggling, we really didn't, from our point of view, we had to do something to restore the viability of the 51, because the 51 and the 376 are in fact the only commercial services in Yeovil. Everything else that runs in and out of Yeovil is either funded by ourselves or by Dorset Council. And that's off the top of my head, I think it's about 21 services in total that the local authorities fund. So we didn't want 51 to become the 22nd, really. We wanted to try and sustain it and move that forward. I fully accept that in looking at the 50 and the 53, we wanted to provide a reasonable service in the new area from Bunford down along Lysander Road. We wanted to provide something which gave a journey at least once in every hour. And the way we came up with that was obviously to reduce the level of service that went out on the unique part of the 11 route. But what we did work out is that we could provide a 2-hourly service. And again, the data we had from South West Coaches suggested that the number of passengers travelling in that area was relatively low. And certainly the number of journeys being made from Abbey Manor to Preston Grove was very low, and one of the reasons why we looked at that reduction, because we knew the service levels are low. But as you say, it is something we can take away, continue to monitor and look at as to whether we can do something to improve the situation for people in that area.
Okay, thanks, John. I think that's very clear.
Can I make one comment?
Who's that? Sorry, who's this?
Tony.
Hang on. We've got David Redgewell that wants to speak. And listen, I think on the question of the 11, we've heard what you've had to say, what everybody's had to say. You've heard what John has had to say. We will take away your comments, but I think that subject has been covered pretty comprehensively. So I'm going to go to David.
Yeah, well, thanks, Richard. So the few points I want to raise is, obviously I'm pleased about the new services, but on the 21 in particular, I am concerned about, having been out on it about 6 or 7 times now, on the new buses and the older buses, watching the drivers and crews trying to get through to Burnham through Dunbar, and then passengers, again a hospital issue, which is clearing government guidance. We are going from privatised bus companies to publicly controlled through enhanced quality partnerships or other frameworks. There's a bill in Parliament now, which I support. But the hospital at Weston-super-Mare, I've seen patients telling me at Burnham-on-Sea saying they're missing their appointments at Weston Hospital. Well, I'm afraid, just for first knowledge, because I'm not, there's 2 regional companies here, which makes things more difficult than ever. People have appointments at Bridgewater, but then they don't go to Musgrove Park. They are sent forward to Western General for outpatients and inpatient care, because that covers what was the old Sedgmoor of the county, Richard. So I am keen to make sure that we look at this issue and make sure that these BSIP services, electric services, are not missing each other at with long waits at Burnham-on-Sea seafront, and passengers in despair trying to get across what was once a through route between first operation in southwest England. So I'd ask that be looked at very carefully, and a lot of it is down to Highway Works, and not say the First Group PLC. On the issue of Taunton, and I'm careful what I say here, because I know Devon's got elections, and so has other parts of Southwestern Peninsula. But the Falcon, and I don't think Stagecoach is on the call, has changed its timetable, which I welcome. I think there's a Devon involvement, and that's why I'm careful what I say. And I welcome that new timetable and new branding by Stagecoach. I think it's moved away more from Megabus to Stagecoach again. But the facilities at BP Garage, Sonia, are some of the worst in the region. And yet we've got that bus. It's the only 24/7 bus service you got, Richard, across the region, which is welcome. I know you've mentioned it Peninsula a lot of times. But the facilities at Taunton and Bridgewater are good, by the way, and some of the other bus stops. Wellington's okay. But we need to look at BP Garage to see if we can get some shelters in there. And there's no flags for the Park and Ride Stagecoach service, which connects in and out of it, which is very, very useful if you're using that route to Bristol or to Exeter or down to Plymouth itself, or even to Wellington for that matter, or Clumpton. So I wonder if we can get that looked at and some conversation with Stagecoach. And of course, First Group themselves, I think it's the 18th launch date.
I'm going to cut in here,
I'm just going to finish the point, Richard, which is saying quickly. That will also be a major Flixbus stop for connectivity in and out of Taunton, going towards Penzance and up towards Bristol and London. So perhaps those issues of connectivity could be have a look at, Richard. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll take on board what you've said. I don't know whether John or Natasha wants to come in on any of those points at this point, or whether we're just going to take away those comments. I'm guessing we're going to take them away. Okay, I've got Dan. Dan James.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Dan James, Exmoor National Park. Just wanted to raise very quickly the EX1, which obviously we very much welcome, the kind of continuation of some sort of service. It was great news to hear that. It was a slight shame that we didn't have a bit more notice. We missed some key opportunities to promote it in things like our annual publications for visitors, which would have been good to have had it in. And obviously it is a much reduced service, in comparison to previous years. But I think really my question or thought is around the timetable. The timetable on the first website, if I'm honest, is completely impossible to read. We've had our National Park Centre staff trying to kind of decipher it and work out what all the different numbers mean, etc. And it's just a plea whether we can just get a single PDF of the timetable in both directions for off-season and for the peak season, so the two different timetables, just because I think for visitors in particular and kind of occasional users at the moment you almost need a degree to read it. So I don't know whether that's something for First as the operator. I know last year they said there was no funding for printed timetables, but it was kind of almost the number one question in our centres, was saying we just want to see a timetable. And if First can't do it, whether there's maybe something through BSIP marketing,
Thank you.
Look at.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to move on to Peter. Peter is actually a board member and can speak. I think we'll take on board what you said, and obviously First are on the call, so they'll be listening in. Peter.
Yeah, just endorse those comments as a rider of the. I think it's now going to be called the Exmoor Explorer. The EX1, it's great we've got it back. It's a pity it's not the same service as before, but it is a fantastic journey to go from Minehead to Lynmouth. So and I know from talking to the Exmoor officers in Lynmouth just how important it is to that town. That service. So it's great that with the help of Devon, a lot of help from Devon, that service has been maintained. It's been said before, I think that the amount of money we got on BSIP this time was testimony to the hard work of Somerset Council, the generosity of the government, and also one would like to think the commitment we've seen from all our MPs in the Somerset Council area to push for prioritising Somerset's buses at the DFT. We need them to continue to lobby for us, but they are doing, and it's great that they've become so involved in bus issues. I know a number of them have said to me that bus issues are the thing which gets most often raised on the doorstep. So it's good that we have got MPs interested in buses. I have a particular issue in Taunton, which is with all the changes which are still bedding down as far as bus users are concerned, they're getting used to them. There is a real issue with early morning buses from Wellspring and Priorswood into Taunton, the 622 and the 652. I fear Natasha is going to say there's no money left over, but there is a real need to try and re-establish those early morning bus services. So if we could put it on your agenda and John Perrett's agenda just to consider that would be really useful. What would also be useful, and this is something as and when there is time, we've asked on a number of occasions for an assessment of the BSIP exercise in Taunton. As David Northey said, it was the flagship for our BSIP operations across Somerset. It was the justification for nearly all the money going to Taunton and hardly any going to Yeovil or to Bridgewater or elsewhere in the 22 settlement. What we haven't seen is an assessment as to how effective it was and what lessons have been learned and what lessons are being applied, because the BSIP allocations in Yeovil and Bridgewater are very different in nature from the low fares and other services that were applied in Taunton with the 22 BSIP. So it would be useful if we could have an assessment as to what we've learnt from that and what were the successes and what perhaps weren't the successes. There is a reference to the online timetable and booklet. I assume this booklet would be an online booklet. I don't think there is going to be a printed booklet or the budget for a printed booklet. I think the important thing is whatever is done online should be able to be printable in a readable, legible format. And I think that's something that Somerset Council needs to consider in its display of timetables.
Okay.
And I think I'll leave it there. Richard, you've obviously
Thank you,
had enough.
Peter. That's yeah, no, I think we've had a good discussion on the BSIP, and I totally agree with you, Peter, that it would be useful to have an understanding on how the previous BSIP has impacted. Like with everything, we are how should I say, time short, and on being able to achieve everything we would like to do in regard to wash ups and everything. But I take your point. I'm not going to go to you, David, again, I'm afraid. We are running a little bit behind, so I'm going to move straight on to updates from operators. So who have we got online? Who wants to go first?
Want us to go first, Rich? West of England?
Yeah.
We haven't really got much, to be fair. So I've pulled some very quick numbers from the 376 extension down to Yeovil on Sunday and the evenings. In terms of passenger numbers, very hard for us to work out how many people are travelling from Bristol to Yeovil, but from Yeovil to Bristol, nice and easy. So last Sunday we had 62 people use the bus from Yeovil to Bristol, which is lovely. And then the Saturday we had 6 passengers for the evening extension towards Bristol. And then for the weekdays, we're on an average of 5, but we expect more people to be travelling back towards Yeovil in the evening rather than heading towards Wales and Bristol. Then across the rest of the network, not really much from us to say, really. Everything's kind of going as expected. Slight issue on the first day of overcrowding on the D2, but that seems to have resolved itself down to a full bus. So keeping a close eye on that one. And yeah, that's about it from us.
Okay. So who's next? Have we any other operators on?
Yeah, Peter, South West Coaches.
Okay, jump in.
Hello, Peter, South West Coaches. Yeah, no real updates other than obviously, as we've already discussed, the Service 11 been repurposed to the 50 and the 53. 50-53 running well. Numbers are growing across the week. Obviously, with any service, it starts off massively low and will grow. So we'll keep an eye on that. But it's only been running a week, so nothing really to report on that. And the rest of our services are running well. We are due to make a couple of timetable changes on the CR5, which runs into Yeovil, which is a Dorset service but runs into Yeovil. That'll be taking place at the end of July, but they're only sort of timing points, so nothing of any particular importance on those fronts, just to keep the service running well.
Fantastic. Okay, who else have we got then?
It's Josh at Hatch Green Coaches.
Hi, Josh.
Hello. We started operating the 99 service between Taunton and Shard at the beginning of April, and I'm really pleased to report we've had some fantastic passenger feedback, anecdotally about the vehicle that we've used on the service and about reliability. So that service seems to have started well for us. The service also had a route change after the first 2 weeks, and we're now serving Shoreditch Road into Taunton rather than Stoke Road. Stoke Road and Chestnut Drive are now being served by the number 3, operated by Somerset Council. We have provided timetables for the number 3 service on the 99 as well, because there's been a bit of confusion with people not knowing which service they'll be travelling on. But I think that will just take a bit of time for passengers to get used to which particular route is now serving their bus stops. I was very keen to hear from Mark earlier on about the Taunton Transport Hub. It will have quite a bearing on us to see how those plans evolve, because it's a very frequent source of kind of correspondence between us and John Perrott and Lisa Bentley to do with lots of vehicles and pressure on the space at Castle Way, and Mark has kindly agreed to spend some time talking with us on a one-to-one basis about what the plans for the Taunton Transport Hub will kind of be like, and hopefully take on board some of our feedback. We're struggling quite a bit at the moment with roadworks, especially in the Taunton area. So we've been liaising with John quite a bit about how we can overcome some of those obstacles with road closures. But apart from that, I don't have anything further to add at this point.
Fantastic. Thanks, Josh. I believe, oh, hang on. We've got Adam.
Good morning, Adam Milliston, First Bus South. I've just got a brief presentation to share regarding our network changes which started Sunday a week ago, if I may share that quickly. Just starting with Taunton, I expect you'll all be aware we have merged the 1 and 2 services together. The great advantage to that is Priorswood, the section served by the 2, will now get a service every half an hour rather than hourly. You will have hopefully seen electric buses have already started making it out onto the roads. We are increasing the number of those every day. Route 1E continues to operate as it has before on the old number 1 routing, into the Park and Ride. Minor timetable tweaks on service 4, and again, electric buses will be on that imminently if they are not there already. Service 6 has unfortunately had to be reduced down to hourly, in line with the patronage levels that we are seeing on the service. Service 7 has remained largely similar. However, we had very, very few passengers using it through to the railway station, so that has been removed with the time within the timetable reused to assist reliability. Moving on to cross-county services, there's a timetable overhaul on the 21 and 21A. It does mean that the frequency has dropped down to every 35 minutes rather than every 30. And once the roadworks at Dunbar have finished, we hope that will give a really significant improvement to the reliability of the service. And again, electric double-deckers are out on there already. A little bit of restructuring on the 22 corridor through Wellington. The 22B to Jerston Fields has been removed. We had very, very few passengers along that section. All of the 22 group now divert via Orchard Grove to serve that growing housing estate. One of the X22 trips, which serve the college and continue to Columpton, has been renumbered to 22C, just for clarity of which bus is which, and the full new timetable throughout to assist reliability. As Natasha presented earlier, the 25 and 25A have been restructured with some BSIP funding there, so I won't repeat myself. 28 corridor, the X28 has been removed. We have focused our resource on improving the core 28 service, with again the 28A diversion now being left to only evenings and Sundays. So 28 is on a standard routing all day long, every 40 minutes. Minor timetable tweaks on service 30. 99 has now transferred to a different operator, as you will all be aware. Again, Exmoor 1, EX1 will now be back for the summer season. And your request for a PDF timetable has been noted. We will get that sent over to you as soon as we can. Bridgewater, again, as Natasha said, B1 has been improved significantly to improve the frequency with later evening journeys, earlier morning journeys, and a Sunday service. timetable tweaks to the 14 and 15. And finally, in the oval, the 54, we have removed the double back to the Fleet Air Arm Museum due to very, very low numbers of passengers on that section, and the services being supported by BSIP. On the 58 and 58A, the 58A will no longer operate, or is no longer operating now, due to lack of use along that section unique to the A section. And the CR4, as at a request of Dorset Council, the routing has been revised slightly, so we are no longer serving Marnhull on the service. I believe one of the other CR routes is now covering that more intensively, and the routing around Stallbridge has been adjusted. This is all designed to make the service simpler to use, more consistent and more reliable. And finally, we have added a Sunday service thanks to BSIP funding on service 51. And I believe that is all from us.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to ask you to drop me an email because you're a new face to me, and I don't actually know your position within the first group, which I was wondering whether you could let us know that.
Yes, I'm one of the network managers. I am here instead of Terence, who you'd normally have.
Okay, I got you. So you're filling in for Terence.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks, Adam, and I'd appreciate your email. Fantastic. I know I've got a question from David, but I'm not sure this is a question part. There's been plenty of questions put in the in the meeting chat, and I'd ask David to put his question in there as well, and then we can get a response to that. And I'm sure Adam has taken note on the concerns over the 51, especially to do with reliability issues. But I'd also like to express our thanks to getting the electric buses running. There's been several out already, including the Burnham-on-Sea route, which is quite exciting. Okay, I'm going to move on. I think we'll go to timetable changes. John.
Morning again, everybody. My name is John Perrett. I'm Service Manager for Transporting Somerset, and what I would do is just give a reminder really on the timetable change arrangements that we have coming up. So I'm going to share my screen briefly. Let me know if everybody can see that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So timetable change dates were set back in July 23 at a bus advisory board meeting then, that we would have two main timetable change dates per year, with flexibility maintained for unforeseen or emergency operational issues. The table, and at the October meeting, we normally set the dates for the following year. So we set those back in October 2024, and it's just a reminder really for everybody, particularly for operators but also for board members, of the process going forward. So if you look down the table there, you'll see we're at the 29th of April at the moment at the Q2 bus advisory board meeting. The next consultation period for changes to bus timetables starts on the 22nd of June and ends on the 19th of July. So that's consultation with Somerset Council, Bus Advisory Board and key stakeholders. And then 2 days after the start of that period, on the 24th of June, we've got the next Bus Advisory Board. And it's a reminder for operators that we would like them obviously to come along to that meeting and present any changes they're planning for the beginning of September. So just a reminder there for people to come along armed with that information. Obviously, the registration period of the 42 days starts on the 20th of July and finishes on the 30th of August, so 42 days. So services need to be registered by the 20th of July for the change, with the change date being effectively for Sunday services the 31st of August or the 1st of September for Monday to Friday services. and that's the second change date of the year. And then at the bus advisory meeting on the 14th of October, we will agree specific change dates for 2025. And before then, we will be discussing that with WECA and Devon and other neighbouring authorities to try and make sure we can align as much as we possibly can with their change dates for 2026. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. I will just go back to, we've had a couple of questions put in the chat, and I'm just going to pick up on Dave Mansell's, Councillor Dave Mansell's question about timetables being put up rather than just showing the times at one stop. I just wonder if somebody from First can just acknowledge that they've seen that question. We've got a thumbs up. I'm not sure who that's from. From Rebecca. That's good. So excellent. So First will take that away. And David's question on punctuality. I think, John, have you got any figures on lost time?
I've got some information currently on lost mileage in recent weeks, certainly in the last couple of weeks, and we're talking here specifically around First South routes. There's been a significant improvement in recent weeks. It's averaging out, I would say, roughly at the minute at about 1 to 1.5% lost mileage generally. Obviously, the introduction of the new electric buses has had an impact, and of course, the new timetables has had an impact as well. And we've spent a lot of time working with South in recent weeks. I know they have increased staffing, and the levels of vehicles at the moment are higher than normal as the new EVs are coming in. The older buses have yet to come out of service, I believe. So there is, there is spare capacity, and appears to be. And the monitoring we've done so far, there have been 1 or 2 issues here and there, but again, a lot of that I think is related to unforeseen circumstances, if you like, in terms of breakdowns and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, as I say, the lost mileage currently is running somewhere in the region of about 1.5% per day, generally.
Perfect. Thanks for that update, John. I think that probably answers David's question. Right, I'm going to go on to the update from the chair of the bus user and stakeholder group. I can see David Redgewell's hand is still up. I'm hoping that's a legacy hand.
No, it was just a quick point, Richard. It was just simply to say that can we just make sure, because obviously we're in pre-election period and I understand all that, Richard, just can we make sure at the next meeting the conversations with the councils that John mentioned on cross-border services and funding, because I know you like the funding, Richard. And the other thing I was going to say, the timetable, if we can work this through, Hannah Young, I'm going to be careful here, but other people in councils that are up for election and areas will contribute financially to a decent book for Somerset. So don't shoulder it all yourself, Richard. The others will pay as well from the surrounding unitaries and WECA. So let's have that conversation about a decent book like Devon and Cornwall. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, David. Okay. Right, I'm going to move straight on to Peter. I'm sure he's got a lot to say. It's been an interesting year. So, Peter.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's start with some very good news, and it's been referred to already. The Somerset Council area has finally entered the era of electric buses, or at least for services emanating out of Taunton. Here we see a dramatic transition from aging diesel buses to brand new electric buses. I think we've now got 10 currently on the road, and during the summer it will get up to 25 e-buses. It's posed a huge engineering challenge for the folk at the Taunton depot. It's been much easier at the Minehead depot, and it's still ongoing at Taunton, but progress is being rapidly made. The 25 electric buses will result in a dramatic upgrade in the First South fleet. and a significant down-aging of the entire Somerset fleet. The Somerset Council area, which had one of the oldest fleets in the country, is going through a transformation, and we very much welcome it. And we're very grateful to First Group for its decision to upgrade their fleet in Somerset after seeing cuts to their maintenance facilities over recent years at depots in Bridgewater and Yeovil. There were questions being raised as to First's commitment to Somerset, but as a symbol, those 25 e-buses provides welcome reassurance. We can only also hope that this rejuvenation of much of the fleet will result in a much needed improvement in the reliability of First South operations. I must admit that bus users in Taunton and Yeovil and elsewhere would have been puzzled by John Perrett's comment about the reliability performance, because we in the Somerset Bus Partnership have been told time and time and time again this year how regular and loyal bus users of First South have been let down by service cancellations by First South. Regular bus users simply couldn't get to work, often jeopardizing their employment prospects, couldn't get to medical appointments, and it goes on and on about the impact of an unreliable bus service, which at times I'm afraid it has been. It's got to the point that buses users can't rely on buses, and too often they're being left stranded, have been left stranded at bus stops waiting for buses that fail to turn up. It was beginning to give a bad name to busing it and undermining all our combined efforts to encourage that hoped-for modal shift to going by buses. So reluctantly, but necessarily, and for the second time, Somerset Bus Partnership, on behalf of bus users, felt obliged to refer this performance to the Traffic Commissioner for investigation by the DVSA. We have had regular lost mileage figures over periods here at the Bus Advisory Board. John referenced one over the last 2 weeks. It would be more informative if we had it over the last 4 or 5 months, because I think that would reflect the problems that bus users are experiencing. These are people who want to use buses but have been let down. So we hope that First South, we actually feel confident with the steps that the management team at First South are taking, that things will improve. And obviously with the buses, that's going to be a major factor. And the extra facility of spare buses is welcome. April has seen the twice annual timetable changes. They were agreed by the Bus Advisory Board that they would be on April the 7th. But in fact, they've been split this month over 2 dates. Most operators changed on April the 7th. First South plus 1 or 2 other associated changes happened over the bank holiday weekend of April the 20th. It's always confusing for bus passengers to come to terms with a new bus timetable. It has a huge impact on people's lives, family lives, which is one of the reasons why it was agreed that we should only have 2 changes and we should coordinate them, and as far as possible with neighbouring authorities. We must do better than we've done this time. Also, a thought for John Perrett when he's talking to his colleagues: bank holiday weekends also make it so much harder to organise bus stalls so that we can go and inform bus users of changes to their buses. Unfortunately, we know that the next change is scheduled for the August bank holiday weekend. Let's try and avoid that in 2026, those bank holiday weekends for bus changes, if we possibly can. As to the process of announcing timetable changes, we would very much like to thank First West of England for getting their printed timetable out to us well ahead of the change date and in good time for the bus stalls we've been running in the north of the county. We'd also like to thank Fairsaver and Southwest Coaches, and in past times Hatch Green too, for getting timetables to us for bus stalls. It's unfortunate, it's regrettable that some operators don't supply us with timetables, because we have people out there giving them out to bus users. It means we spend the majority of the funding for the Somerset Bus Partnership on getting timetables designed and printed for operators who haven't got them printed for us. Unfortunately, this time First South haven't delivered their excellent timetable booklets yet. It's now 10 days after the change date, and it's likely to be another fortnight before we're going to get them. The First South timetable is of such a scale and size, costs them a lot of money to produce, and we simply don't have the funds to print our own timetables, and so we've had to cancel a lot of bus stalls, something we very much regret doing. Last year we ran 100 bus stalls. This year we're probably going to be running a fewer number, and we had hoped to increase the number of bus stalls we ran. So bus users have had to rely on information at bus stops in many cases to discover the new times of buses. And we'd like to thank both First West of England and First South for putting a particular effort into getting timetable information up at bus stops. It is important, and we're grateful to them for their efforts. It's a difficult, time-consuming task, and they've done a good job of it. Printed timetables, though, are still the preferred method for regular bus users of getting timetable information. They are important, they need to be maintained, and we're very grateful to the bus operators who do print and design bus timetables for us. Just like to reiterate the point that Andy Strong made at the very beginning of this meeting. As bus users, we would like to see a multi-operator ticket. There was a reference to it being a long-term solution. We would like to have a deadline set for when we will get a multi-operator ticket. It would be something very good if Richard could set a deadline and then ensure that his team keeps to that deadline. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much for allowing some of our members to express their views. Richard, it is appreciated for that flexibility. And let's hope we're all going to enjoy using the bus in this wonderful sunshine. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'm not going to give you a date off the cuff, but your comment on the multi-purpose ticket is very much acknowledged, and it is something that I am personally already pushing the team very hard on, and I would like to see some movement very quickly on this myself. So just to make that clear that it's very much desirable, and something that I am very strongly looking at. Okay, that's a great update, Peter. And yes, I've noticed that Rebecca has put in the chat that she's hoping to get timetables to you next week. Can I just confirm that, Rebecca?
Yeah, they're being printed now, Richard. Hopefully in the next week to 10 days, they should have come through. 2,500. Thank you.
That's useful. And obviously, hopefully the bus partnership can run some good stalls at that point and get them out there to those who need them. Okay, I think we're on to any other business. So, board members, any other business?
Richard, David Redrock, could we?
David.
I know both. Yeah, I know you're keen on it as well, and I am. Peninsula and Gateway, obviously carefully because they're both in election mode. But there is the coach network across our area. It connects into the buses in Somerset. And David Nordy and I always agree that Taunton's a major transport hub, not just for buses, the bus station, but also for coaches. Do you think we could have and invite, because they've been to WECA and other Gloucestershire transport boards, National Express and Flix, just to talk to us about their integration and what their proposals are between local bus. I know Rebecca is running both because she's running Flix, or her colleagues are. So perhaps we can have that as an agenda item and understand the connectivity issues I know David knows a lot about. And also perhaps we could have Luke, not Luke, it's no longer Luke, the new rail officer at First Great Western and Andrew Aldi to come and talk to us about integration, because with the government white paper on integration, that's probably the way we should be going. On the integrated transport thing, on the ticketing, can we just make sure it doesn't stop at some weird boundary at East Brent, and that the integrated ticketing stuff we work through with Western Gateway as well, so people can get into Bristol and Bath from the north of the county of Somerset, from the Mendip district in particular? Thanks.
I think that's a good point on the coaches. Natasha, are you there?
Yes, I'm
just
here.
Wondering whether we can extend an invite to.
Yes, well, National Express are a member of the board anyway, so we can ask them if they could do an update.
That's a good idea. Perfect. Okay. And
Flix, Natasha, go through first group. That's what I was going to say. So maybe Rebecca can do something. She's on the call with Flixbus, because I know they're running Flixbus from, I think, the end of May. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, David. Well, I think, unless there's anything else, I'll move on to the date of the next meeting, which is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, the 24th of June 2025, and again that should be at 10 a.m. So if you've got your diaries ready, if you want to stick that date in. So again, thank you very much. It was actually a very interesting board meeting, and I think we got through quite a considerable amount of detail today. There's certainly stuff for us to take away and look at, and I think there's stuff for some of the bus operators and indeed for the bus partnership to look at. So I think on that note, I shall end the meeting at 12 minutes early, 11:48. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.